Dangerfield.
All right there. This is an article from the dailymail.co.uk. I haven't read it all, I haven't read it thoroughly, but I've read enough to know that it's a very interesting article. And I would be very interested in your thoughts, so leave them in the comments below. Headline: It's horrifying how some young Western men are so alienated by woke culture that they even admire the Taliban's twisted mindset, writes Mary Harrington. Amid the blood-spattered horrors of Kabul, perhaps the most startling response has been an outpouring of warlike passion from disaffected young Western men. But they're not backing Western soldiers, they're cheering on the Taliban. Far-right groups are gloating. One user on an online message board called the toppled Western-backed Afghan government Globo Homo Clown World. He characterised this as liberalism, consumerism, secularism, usury, democracy, global capitalism, and most of all, feminism, women's rights, women's liberation. Such men consider abhorrent this value system that an American-led coalition spent trillions of dollars trying to instill via 2 decades of Afghan nation building. These alienated men hate all of it. The whole woke world view, from racial tolerance to LGBT rights to feminism, and they're lionising the Taliban as heroic anti-woke freedom fighters. Excuse me. Now already these men, an outpouring of warlike passion, one man, far-right groups are gloating. I mean, no evidence of this, no examples. Literally, she says here, one user. So she's really painting a picture of, as she says up the top, some Western young men, they even admire the Taliban. I mean, what, are you talking about 3 people or 4? There's really there's nothing there for me to understand. Have you found one tweet that you didn't like? Maybe she'll go on to confirm the numbers, but so far it's very strange. These alienated men hate all of it. Well, what alienated men? And what, they all, all of them that you haven't specified hate all of it, right? Really? Sure. I'm sure that's how it works. These alienated men hate all of it. The whole woke worldview, from racial tolerance to LGBT rights to feminism. And they're lionising the Taliban as heroic anti-woke freedom fighters. One meme, yeah, she starts the paragraph. One meme circulating on social media as Kabul fell depicted barefoot Taliban fighters next to a photo of American soldiers wearing high heels for a PR stunt, mockingly connecting Western support for gender bending to a failure of military competence. And above all else, these angry men detest feminism. That's the second time she said that. Look back up here. And most of all, feminism, women's rights, women's liberation. And there's a completely unrelated photograph of a couple of Taliban men with some weapons. This one looks like he's got his iPod strapped to his. Anyway, following the American retreat, one far-right forum member highlighted a report that an Afghan woman had been shot for refusing to don the hijab. He commented, "Whores get what they deserve." Another claimed, excuse me, another claimed that all women secretly want to be oppressed, stating that soon every Afghan female will embrace their natural place and start to be happy like they haven't been in the last 20 years. Others dream of imposing Islam-style modesty for women in the West. One high-profile anonymous Twitter account... What? High-profile anonymous? One high-profile anonymous Twitter account suggested that after the pandemic ends, women should continue to wear face masks. Islam is right about women, he declared. Ah, she's alright talking about memes, just not the one she doesn't know. A small minority... What? Hang on. 2, 1, 4, one bloke, a meme. A small minority of young Western men then... Oh yeah, now you've cleared that up. We now know what you're talking about, yeah. 5. A small minority of young Western men then... that then is amazing. That's, you know, she's given you the proof. There was a bloody meme, for Christ's sake. And a tweet from a high-profile anonymous Twitter user. So now she's summarised it. A small minority of Western men then see the West's enemies as heroic freedom fighters against a despised regime. Well, you can't argue that they're heroic freedom fighters. The Taliban are that. You don't have to agree with their politics, but they are heroic freedom fighters. They just are. The Taliban are lionised, not just in homophobic, anti-Semitic and misogynistic terms, but of icons of manliness. One common image is the Chad. Oh, God. I mean, this is the Hacker 4chan level now. The Chad, a stereotypically hyper-masculine man, and with the fall of Kabul, TaliChad images began to appear, adapting the Chad with an Afghan-style turban and beard. Okay, so she spent an afternoon on 4chan. Okay, now I'm getting the picture. Yeah. There has been a call for an Aryan TaliChad empire. There has been a call. Who from? Who from? A call? Well, like a call to action? Is it a website? Can you link us to it? Can you give us an idea of its scale? Or can you not? And have you not? At all so far in this piece, which is saying some very, very dodgy things and is also levelling accusations. And when you don't specify, when you don't specify and you talk about many Western men, etc., it's horrifying when some young Western men... Oh, it's an article in the newspaper, so it must be important. There must be scale. Right, where are we? Right, the Taliban are lionised not just in homophobic, anti-Semitic and misogynistic terms, but as icons of manliness. One common image is the Chad, a stereotypically hyper-masculine man, and with the fall of Kabul, TaliChad images began to appear. Where? Adapting the Chad with an Afghan-style turban and beard. There's been a call for an Aryan TaliChad empire to free the world from the yoke of LGBT. The Taliban is epic, said another. As soon as we left, the Taliban took over the country in like 12 hours. There's that picture of a lady Marine holding a baby. Okay? Because that has got what to do with this story. I'll be the first to condemn this swamp, this swamp of hatred. You know, so far it could literally be 2 people. But now it's a swamp of hatred. And of course, there is danger that in discussing it, the noxious opinions will reach a wider audience. But just think for a moment about what it implies. Far from feeling patriotic love for their own culture and nation, a minority of fighting-age Western men viscerally hate it. So now, incredibly, it's a minority of fighting-age Western men. Which could be 49%. and it's amazing the way that she's suggested that if you're engaging in those kinds of memes and those kinds of comments and that kind of 4chan chatter, suddenly you're not a patriot. That isn't patriotic. But I can't. That's bizarre. Because how about if that is patriotic? How about your whole argument starts to collapse because you don't understand that when they see masculine strength that has been ripped from the heart of Western men, they want that masculine strength in their nations because they are patriotic. The way you're using that the way she's using that to separate these people from patriotism is bizarre. And this is where it starts getting interesting because it starts kind of turning in on itself a little bit, the article. They're looking at images of gun-waving men in a violent, war-torn wasteland where women can be beaten with impunity. And they're not horrified, they're envious. Who? Oh, sorry, you said the swamp of them. So how did we get here? Mainstream public culture has changed immeasurably over my adult life. Aged 18 and working in a pub, I was told by the landlady that sexist remarks on my appearance were part and parcel of the job. These days I'd have grounds to take her to court on sex discrimination charges. Nice. She's proud of that. She's proud that she could sue the woman that gave her a job. Yeah. We have more female MPs than ever. So, best person for the job. Half of all doctors are female. More women than men go to university. This is a peculiar line. Big companies publish gender pay gap data. Now that's incredible. That's an incredible line. She doesn't say what the data is. She doesn't say what it suggests. She doesn't tell you anything about the so-called gender pay gap. She just says big companies publish gender pay gap data because she's obviously looked into it. And if she was to actually say what that data suggests when looked at with a smear of intelligence, you would understand it. She can't go into the details. Across the West, you can be fired for being lecherous to women. Yeah, you can also be fired for saying hello to them. You can also be fired for saying, oh, you look nice. How dare you? I spent 2 hours getting ready. How dare you tell me I look nice? Or saying unkind things about LGBT people. What we used to call jokes. In July, a teacher was fired from a Surrey school for referring to a transgender pupil as that. Great. Even the American military industry is now run by women. Defence manufacturing, Behemoths, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman all have female CEOs. It's difficult to find mainstream cultural imagery that doesn't at least superficially support the girl boss consensus. Gillette faced a backlash in 2019 for lecturing its male customers on toxic masculinity. Nike, a company that according to its own report makes twice as much money from selling menswear as women's wear, ran a campaign that featured a pink-haired teenage girl sneering at patriarchy. If you're a middle-class white woman, as I am, this is all greatly to your advantage, but clearly not everyone is on board. When a 22-year-old man shot dead 5 people in Plymouth earlier this month, his horrifying actions were widely connected to his radicalisation by an ideology spread by the same men lionising the Taliban. Whoa, 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 whoa. How did you make that connection? Oh, they were widely connected, were they, by the same men? Who? This is... this is really dangerous. This is really, and in a very subtle way. That's what struck me about this, because a lot of what she's saying is making sense. A lot of what she's saying making sense. You know, masculinity has taken an absolute smashing in the West, and there's been huge cultural changes, and when men see people like Taliban, men of war, men who retook their country in 12 hours, she has correctly identified an element of envy, not of all the other. You know, you can be envious of people having that, being allowed, being granted their natural masculinity without agreeing with everything else they do. But she's kind of muddying the waters a bit. She's kind of, you know, she's using some actually quite interesting arguments to kind of Trojan horse in a load of absolute bullshit as well. And the lack of specificity over who these people are, how many there are, is just shocking. You know, the evidence for all of this, which she's kind of, you know, she's given us that, she's summarised that. It was a meme, a tweet, and one other thing. So, you know, and this is all coming off the back of that, which is frankly bizarre. The shootings prompted an outbreak of nice white women on TV talking about toxic masculinity and the poison bigotry of radicalised far-right online cultures. But the only cure usually available to deal with such disaffection is a mixture of therapy and repression. As one feminist cartoon put it, more mental health resources plus a redoubling of efforts to strangle misogyny at the root. Great cartoon. How comes it's a cartoon when the feminists do it and it's a meme when Taliban lionising men in the swamp do it? But if education was the answer to creating egalitarian young men, what? Now we've just leapt. We're just leaving all the other stuff behind. We wouldn't be where we are. Now this again is where it gets interesting. Deindustrialisation has driven an increasingly feminised education and employment landscape. Traditional sources of male employment have been replaced by service economy and caring roles, where physical strength and camaraderie take second place to soft skills are all important. To meet these changing employment needs, schools have turned away from teaching knowledge in a disciplined, competitive environment in favour of teaching soft skills. Teachers are 70% female. 82% at primary level. And those points she raises there are really relevant to the whole issue of Western masculinity, and that's again what is sort of bizarre about this article. And yet somehow this isn't translating into universal male adoption of a more feminist or a more feminine or feminist mindset. What? And yet somehow this isn't translating into universal male adoption of a more feminine or feminist mindset. Wow. Just blow me. That's incredible. She's like, you know, we've got 72% of the teachers are women, 82% at primary level, but this still hasn't turned all the men into feminine and feminists, into feminine men and feminists. I mean, what are we going to do? If we can't do it already, what are we going to do? That's what she wants. That's what they want. And then she asks why. She asks why some Western men, the swamp-dwelling Western men who look at heroic men of war and envy them. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. Instead, boys are turning out. Girls now consistently outperform boys at school. What a surprise. Amid rising unemployment, these alienated, embittered young men spend their days marinated in violent, misogynistic pornography and violently sexist computer games. They see shrinking opportunities, contempt for masculine role models, and a world that appears to hate them. Small wonder, perhaps, that such men look enviously at Afghanistan, the one place in the world where a cartoonish woman-hating machismo looks to be winning. And she's nailed it. She's nailed it. And yet she doesn't understand it. Just as they tried in Afghanistan, our moral betters have sought to impose liberal democracy and woke feminism from the top down here. And like in Afghanistan, they failed to win the hearts and minds. They're a fundamentalist Islamic group. It failed. I mean, maybe we need more women teachers in Afghanistan. And yet it still hasn't happened. They're still not feminine and feminists. That's incredible. Instead, they've created a paper-thin, fake consensus over a boiling pit of angry resentment. You don't have to agree with those posting TaliChad memes to think this is an ominous state of affairs. And I fear it will be our daughters who pay the price. What? What? You've just written an entire article blatantly explaining why men are struggling so much in many areas of their lives, in education, at school, and employment, their basic masculine nature. And then at the end of it, it will be our daughters who pay the price. Well, hang on a minute, it's our sons who are already suffering. You've said it yourself. But, you know, fuck them, they're men. You know, men, who needs them? Have you seen Taliban? Good Lord, have you seen it out there? A freaky article. I'll leave a link to it in the description so you can check it out. That is just peculiar. Just peculiar. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think, because I'm struggling to understand. It's almost like she's drunk. It's almost like she's on drugs or something. Because she's like, oh, but this and that is like this. And of course the lack of any specifics and evidence. And she wrote all of that based on a meme and a tweet. Ta-da!
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girando, delle belle turbando al riposo, Narcisetto a dolcino d'amor.